are here. Why? Why are we here this evening? That would be the question. So, tonight is Christmas Eve, which means it's the. Can we lower this light, please? Thank you. I'm blinded by that light right there in the middle light. Okay, well, that one's still in my blinding spot. Okay, kids, thank you. That's so much better. So, it's the birth of who? Who? Okay, this is, this is an interactive time, sometimes. So, yes, but what would you say if I told you that Christmas is not about the birth of Jesus? Would you? Thank you. Very good. You answered correctly. The what? What are you talking about? If it's not about, no, actually, it is about the birth of a baby named Jesus, who later in time, as he studied, he grew, he was dedicated to the teachings of the Jewish literature and everything, and I think he probably went to India and he did some more learning, and he just became so aware, so awake to things that no one else had ever become that aware of. And so he became what is called the Christ. By the way, what is Jesus' last name? Anybody know? It's not Christ. Although those two words, Jesus, Christ, tend to be stuck together. But here's the truth. That's not his last name. Jesus was a human, just like Pam's a human, and Leo's a human, and James and Janet was that human being that had awareness and awakening to something far greater than anyone else had had. And that became the Christ. But, if Christ was Jesus' last name, it would be Sharon's last name and Janet's last name and Deborah's last name. I'd be Liz Christ if it was the last name. But it's not. So I'm going to be sharing with you about that, what is Christ, and also if it's not about Jesus' birth, it's actually something much more. And I'm going to be sharing those two things with you this evening. How's that sound? Something beyond what you have perhaps seen and heard in the past. So it's not necessarily about Jesus, and Christmas is really about the birth within ourselves of our own inner Christ, that part of us that knows. And I'm going to tell you what Christ consciousness is, so I keep you on the edge of your seats, right? So Jesus was, by the way, not the exception, not the only Son of God. He was actually the example of the Christ nature that lives in me, that lives in Carol, that lives in Brendan, that lives in every one of us. It's something that we did not have the study and the unknowing of, but he is our example, the great way shower, the teacher. He was trying to teach people back then the universal laws of the universe. And it was not easy trying to get through all the beliefs that they had been given as they grew up. And we have the same issue, I think. At least I do. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. So here's the thing about the Christ, or I'm just going to talk about Jesus, the man. Now, there is a teaching called the Science of Mind. And Science of Mind is very similar, basically, to the teachings of Unity. And I am associated with both of these organizations. But there is a chapter in the Science of Mind called Finding the Christ. It's 13 pages long. Yes, I know how many pages it is. And it is one of the best chapters that I've ever read about finding the Christ. And it's by Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of the Science of Mind teachings. So he says in this chapter, Christ is the embodiment of divine sonship or daughtership, which has come with varying degrees of power to all people in all ages and to every person in some degree. Christ is a universal presence. Okay? Did you know you have a Christ presence living inside of you and breathing you? Yeah, it's there. We may not have been so aware. We do believe that in the unique personage of Jesus, that he was more fully aware than anyone else we have in record. We believe that Christ comes alike, that presence, to everyone, and there is no particular man or woman destined to become aware in that Christ consciousness. We must understand that Christ is not a person, but a principle. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, so there are some things that we see things in a certain way, but part of what I do here is to give us something beyond what we already know. So these are principles and concepts, that it's a principle. Jesus, the man, became a living embodiment of this universal presence and principle, both sides of it. If we can look upon Jesus from this viewpoint, we shall be able to study his life as a living example. What is more inspiring than to contemplate the consciousness of a man who has the faith to stand in front of a paralyzed man and tell him to get up and walk, and to know very well that he's going to get up and walk? Hello, what kind of consciousness is that? I'm pretty far away from that. And or to stand in front of a tomb of a dead man and tell him to come forth. How many of you have done that? But you have that same Christ consciousness in you. Jesus was not looking to see himself as the exception. He said, everything that I do, you can do, and even greater. I got some work to do, I'm just telling you. So to aspire, to understand that study and prayer and meditation is what assisted. He'd go out in the desert, and that's where he contemplated. He could get past the crowds, and we have crowds around us all the time that are always giving us messages. And how many of you came to the Greg Braden talk almost everybody here. And if you didn't come to Greg Braden's talk on Sunday, it is recorded on our website, which is unitysantafe.org. It was fantastic. And he talked about how things are always seeking to distract us from our own inner power of who we are. I thought it was a fabulous talk. I'm going to be listening to it a couple more times because it was very impactful, and everyone I've talked to had the same sense. So he never thought of himself, basically, as anything greater than. And a little bit more in Ernest Holmes, he says, Christ is not limited to any person, nor does he appear in only one age. He's as eternal as God. I like this. He is God's idea of himself. Chew on that one. Christ is the idea of itself, because we say God is all there is. Spirit is all there is. There's only energy. It's energy. It's vibrational. Everything is in a vibrational state, even things that look like they're stable, because if you break it down into that nucleus and the protons and all that, that's moving. I know I'm definitely not a scientist, but I find it fascinating to see things from that viewpoint. For the Christ to be found in us is to put off the old man or woman with all of our mistakes, doubts, and caught up in fear-based thinking, and to put on a new personage, that which knows that they are the beloved of the divine Spirit. You're all a part of that one. So most of you have heard of the traditional biblical story of Jesus' birth and of that Christmas Eve, correct? Anybody not? I would be really surprised. We all know the story of Mary and Joseph and all the whole pieces and parts. But I'm going to go a different direction. Tonight I'm going to share with you the Christmas story from a metaphysical point of view. That means you're recognizing each and every character and element of the Christmas story as yourself. Every character, Mary, Joseph, Jesus, the shepherds, the wise men, Bethlehem, they all represent an aspect of yourself. That could change the story a bit. So I'm going to invite you to close your eyes as I share this metaphysical Christmas story and see if you can relate to the parts of yourself that I will refer to. And it comes to pass, as it must at some time for all people, that there is sent out a decree from the heart that all the world of effects be examined. And all must go, each into his or her own city, where none other may enter, the realm of the human mind, which is Bethlehem, crowded with random thoughts, confusion, questions, fears, where there has been no peace and no room to give birth to the Christ consciousness. But it is meant that your days should be accomplished, and so with Joseph as your inner strength, and Mary, your soul of pure love, you carry the infant, knowing of your Christ potential as you enter the din, the noisiness of your own mind, Bethlehem. And you seek shelter in a stable, which represents the center of divine light. In this stable, this light you bring forth is where the firstborn knowing of your Christ potential shows up. And your heart becomes a manger to nurture the power of truth born for you this night. And there are, in the same country of your mind, shepherds, which are your intuition and feeling, and which keep watch over your thoughts in the darkness of unknowing. And lo, the angel of the Lord, as your inner guidance, speaks to you, and the glory and the truth of your being begin to shine as a great light all around. Be not afraid of your intuition, for it speaks of great joy that shall be to all people. For into your conscious awareness this day is born your Christ consciousness, the consciousness of the divinity within you. And it is to be a sign unto you that forever you shall find this consciousness cradled within the manger of your own heart. Your intuition and your multitude of feelings begin to sing glory to the power of truth in your highest knowing. And on the earth of your daily affairs, you shall know peace and goodwill towards all people. And when this inner guidance seems to leave you and you enter again into the busyness of your Bethlehem mind, make haste to seek the soul of love as Mary, your inner strength as Joseph, which abide with that infinite self as your Christ consciousness. And when the Herod, which is the part of your ego, which is opposed to the new and still clings to the old beliefs, hears of these things, it may become troubled and seek to gather evidence that this Christ consciousness does not exist. But you follow the star light of truth within. And you come again to the stable, that center of divine light, and you bring forth the presence of spirit, gold representing the richness of life, frankincense for the beauty of life, and myrrh for the eternality of life. And be reminded by your conviction that when you leave this center of light, even for a moment, you depart into the world of effects by a different door of awareness. For when you have experienced the birth of the Christ within, there is no returning to your previous level of consciousness. Written by Dr. Linda McNamara. You do not return to the level of your consciousness that you had prior to tonight. I expect that somewhere in the next day or so, something is shifting within each and every one of us. Now, we talk about consciousness quite a bit. And so what is consciousness? Because consciousness and Christ consciousness, I keep speaking of those, but what is that? Well, consciousness merely means awareness. And now we have varying degrees of consciousness and our awareness. There is a part of us that is Herod. The one is afraid of having new things, new beliefs. It's comfortable with that which has always been. It doesn't want to get out of its comfort zone. And so it tries to find ways not to go into something new, unknowingness, except that that's where life is. We also have what is called Christ consciousness, which is known as our God self or Christ nature, or Buddha nature, or just the simple I am. Now, we've talked about consciousness, but now we're going to add the word Christ consciousness. Because I keep talking about it, but wouldn't it be nice to understand what that is? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah, well, maybe. So, Christ consciousness is what we're giving birth to, what we're awakening to, and what we're speaking about. So there's three aspects of Christ consciousness. First, it is the recognition that everyone and everything is spirit, is the divine. It is the all that is, and it is the vibrational energy and all that is seen and unseen, including, as I've said many times tonight, yourself, your neighbors, the people you don't like, the people that rub you the wrong way. Yeah, this is a stretch. And people that you really disagree with, they are the divine in expression too. Much lower vibration, not awake and aware. I haven't always been awake and aware, trust me, and I'm still growing in my awareness of who and what I am. I aspire to being able to tell somebody who can't walk, get up and walk, right? Or, I want to be able to have that level of consciousness. And I work at it. I mean, I don't work this directly, but it's like studying. So number one, recognizing the divinity of all, which is what unity teaches as one of our belief core concepts. Number two, we create. We are born in the image and likeness of the great creator. So we are creating 24/7. And you go, I am? Yes, by the power of what you're thinking and focusing on. Jesus, the great way shower who had entered into that Christ consciousness, said, it is done unto you as you, what was that? Believe. It is done unto us as we believe. So it's what is going on in here is going to be what I see out here. Leo could see the same thing that I was seeing, and she could have a whole different perspective than I, because everything is filtered through what has been put in here. A lot of beliefs that maybe not even be true, so questioning our beliefs. And number three, Christ consciousness is the pure awareness, I love this, infused of unconditional love and unreserved compassion. Oh, doesn't that just feel good? The unconditional love and unreserved compassion. That's calling me up, because I'm not always compassionate with myself, perhaps, or with others, especially those that I have disagreements with. But what if they were just wounded beings or lost and never knew the truth of who they were? That's where that, not judgment, not to judge, but to see beyond the appearances, another one of Jesus' teachings. So my last question to you for your contemplation is, what would your life and our world look like if you operated from this pure awareness, unconditional love, and unreserved compassion? What would the world look like? What would your life look like? When you do your meditation, look and think about that. So I'm going to close with a poem that I wrote, Spirit and I wrote. 'Twas the night before consciousness. Yes, the night before consciousness. 'Twas the night before consciousness when all through my mind not one thought was stirring. It was rather sublime. Open to the greatest good there possibly could be, I wondered, was there really a God self in me? All my feelings were also quietly asleep, while visions of great joy, my intentions to reap. Both my left brain and right brain also joined in, letting go of all thinking. We could finally begin. In the midst of this quiet arose a great shift. Inside I could feel my whole spirit lift. My inner vision opened. Something was new, yet it was still quite a mystery, and I hadn't a clue. Then in the sky of my mind there shone a great light, giving me great joy and delightful insight. Before me was a baby, so innocent and pure. This child was God. I knew it for sure. Yet something seemed strange. There was something more, which I'd never seen or realized before. This child was me, and I knew as a fact that what I once knew as limitation and lack were simply ideas planted in my mind by others who had simply been blind. The traits of my God self I now truly knew as peace, love, joy, and great freedom too. At that very moment, I released fear, worry, and doubt. I knew only gratitude, inside and out. Seeing the truth that God and I are one, I now realized that I was either God's daughter or son. Jesus was king, a teacher to show us the way. He taught only love and how we ought pray. To become like a child, living in trust and releasing all fears is always a must. For heaven is now, it's right where we live. It's not about getting, it's about what we give. Jesus the Savior was born long ago, not in a palace, but in a manger so low. Where am I? The Savior is consciousness. It's in you and me. It's in knowing the truth that we truly are free. So let's open our hearts and open our minds. Let us go within, where surely we'll find the gift of pure love, expansive and free. It's the gift of God's love, living as you and as me. Embrace the Christ child that you truly are, knowing in the darkest of times there's a bright, shining star. Look to the truth star, shiny and bright. Know your divinity and your holy birthright. May we all live today as pure Christ consciousness, living as God's love. We are truly blessed. And so it is.